Jillian, welcome to
Oh
RealPod.
my God. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. I think that the work you do is so cool, and it seems like a lot of people are really impacted by it. And you have so many, like, really just they hit your heart type of videos. I mean, my favorite one is the one where you're like, you cannot build a loving relationship with someone who doesn't respond to you.
Yeah,
It's just like, hey, here's the facts.
I know. I don't even like realize that that's what I'm doing, but I get that feedback. It's like, okay, I just, I have a minute
Yeah.
and, this is a reel. I've got 60 seconds and I just have to tell you it like it is.
Which everyone needs that.
Yeah.
And congratulations, your book is coming out real soon. It begins with you, the 9 hard truths about love that will change your life. I mean, I'm bought in. I want to know the truths. How did you come up with 9?
It's a really good question. I spent a lot of time reflecting on if I wanted to leave behind certain principles, right? Like, what are the most impactful lessons that I learned about love and relationships? And I do really like the number 9. It's kind of been one of my favorite numbers since I was a kid. And I kind of like the idea of it being an odd number, but I played around with it. And so when I was really able to distill it, and that took some time to really distill it because there's so many things that I want to teach. And it was 9. And then I was like, these are it. And I went over it over and over again. And I sometimes switched the order of things. I mean, was quite an arduous process. It took a lot of thinking. And this is what I landed with.
I love that. And it seems like you were called to this work. You spent over 5 years as a yoga instructor.
Over 20, almost 20 years.
Almost 20. Wow.
Almost 20,
So
yeah. Around 18
almost
years.
2 decades.
Yeah.
Were married.
Yes.
Divorced. Was that sort of the catalyst that led you to this work?
Yes. Again, I was almost a yoga. I was not almost a yoga teacher. I was a yoga teacher for almost 20 years. And so I've always helped people in the relationship with themselves. And I also worked privately with some families and some couples. And I was always fascinated with the mind-body connection and how our relationship with self impacts our relationship with others. And then I was about 7 years into teaching, I was starting to feel like, where do I go with this? Maybe I want something more. Anyway, I ended up meeting the man who would become my husband and then my ex-husband. And yeah, we had a very difficult marriage and it ended terribly. And my mom was at the same time was dying of lung cancer and died. And so I went through a tremendous dark night of the soul. And I could not believe that I was going through a divorce. I couldn't believe that my mom was like, I literally just could not believe my life. And the pain that I was in, I wanted to understand what makes a relationship work. Because I was obsessed with the fact that I wasn't in a position to make the relationship work. And that's when, this was a little over 10 years ago. And that's when I transitioned into helping people. Because once I started to understand and do the work on myself, it's like I had another calling. It's like, I'm not just supposed to be teaching people what to do with their bodies. I need to teach people how to have better relationships, particularly romantic relationships. Because I believe that we could have like all the money that we want in the bank. We could be happy with our bodies. We could be happy with our health. We could be happy with a lot of things. But if our love life, whether we're like in a relationship or not, is not going well, that's going to create a lot of stress and a lot of tension. And it's really the most important thing. And paradoxically, it's the thing that we all sort of struggle with the most because we're not taught this in school. And maybe someone is lucky enough to have parents that really modeled that, but still it can be very, very complex. It's where we feel most vulnerable. Everybody wants love. Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be understood. Communicating with a romantic partner has its nuance that does not exist in friendships and in family relationships. So that's what got me into it.
Okay. I'm so excited. I have so many questions.
Yeah.
Something that you said that stuck out to me was you wanted to understand why that relationship didn't work. Did you end up finding that answer?
Yes, I did.
And what was it?
Well, a lot of different things, but overall, we did not have the tools to make a relationship work. So that's one thing. Like I don't think either one of us really had the self-esteem or the self-worth to make it work. We didn't understand how our issues with mommy and daddy, like his issues with mom, my issues with dad, were impacting the relationship. We didn't have the communication tools. And I will speak just solely for myself. I didn't have the, I didn't, I thought, as we all do, we go into relationships with a blueprint. And that blueprint is, what do I expect a relationship to be? And my blueprint was, you find a nice person, you have chemistry, you get married, and you live happily ever after. And I had no real understanding of like what it actually takes to make a relationship work long term. I had no understanding of what it takes to make a relationship, how your relationship with yourself is so paramount to the relationship you have with another. I didn't know how. I was too fearful of abandonment. I was too fearful of the relationship not working that I did not listen to. And instead I suppressed warning signs that something was very off between the two of us, and instead went into overdrive of trying to make it work or trying to make sure that we didn't break up. So there's a lot of that going on.
I love the accountability of how you're just listing. Here are all the ways I could have been better. I think that in itself, when people say, "Oh, I'm perfect, it's just them."
Yeah.
Okay, there's something there. Like, and I believe it's in one of your videos I heard you say, if you are with someone who has all these red flags, why are you with someone who has all these red flags?
Exactly.
Like, you were a part of it.
Yes. So why did you choose that person? Why did you
Exactly.
overlook it? Why are you're in a relationship with someone who at best is just not a match for you, and at worst actually doesn't treat you with the respect and kindness and love and camaraderie that you deserve inside of a relationship. So we have to be able to search inside ourselves, and it's not about blame, it's about curiosity. Because if we don't have an awareness of what our patterns are, and also an awareness of whatever BS we may have tolerated or whatever BS we may have brought to the relationship, we have to have that awareness because we want to replace old patterning with new patterning and make better choices. And that's just the bottom line. Yeah.
It's wild how it feels so difficult to say to your partner, "I'm sorry, I did that wrong," or "I got too short with you," or "that was totally on me." But once you develop that muscle, it is, just everything opens up and is lighter. The way that I can acknowledge with my husband, Max, "I shouldn't have gotten mad at you," like, or "it was just a rough day and I brought attitude home and I didn't need to,"
Yeah.
it used to feel so difficult to say that. Like, if you said that, it would mean you're flawed and you're not a good person. That's not what it means. It's
No.
just, hey, I can take accountability for this. And then he doesn't think, "Oh, I'm just not good enough, or I need to keep her happy."
Yes.
But it takes time.
It does take time. And the ego is pretty powerful. And it's very true. It's like if we admit we're wrong, somehow we think that we're admitting that we're a bad person or we're not good enough. And it takes a tremendous amount of emotional intelligence to be able to say, look, that was not my best moment. I'm really sorry. Let me make it up to you. And yeah, it's huge. And just what you said, it's those little things like, "I had a rough day. I did not have to bring that attitude home. I'm sorry." Like just saying that, and there's so much repair that happens in just that statement. And like you said, then he doesn't have to think, "Oh my God, it's me," or "I can never make her happy," or all these things. And then we get inside our heads and we create this whole story in fiction. And then we're not really talking about it. And then there's resentment that builds up. This is the thing that leads to the demise of a lot of relationships, not all, but many.
In your 9 Hard Truths, I mean, they're all great. And if people want them all, they're going to have to get the book. But there are a few that I wanted to talk about with you. And you just brought it up, the mommy daddy issues. And one of your truths is you must make peace with your parents.
Yeah.
And that one just stuck out to me.
Yeah.
People might think, "Oh, how are my parents involved in my relationship with this person I love?" So what does that truth mean?
So there's a lot to this truth. The first thing that I'll say, and there's a disclaimer in the book, which is that, I've worked with people who've been sexually abused as children by their parents or by a parent, or horribly abused. And I would never tell that person, make peace with your parent. I just wouldn't. I would never actually tell that person to even forgive their parent. But that's very small. The majority of people are either, maybe they have a troubled relationship with a parent, there's like some tension there, or some unfinished business, like they never talked about something, or they feel angry at their parent for, not loving them enough, like all these things that kind of like are mini traumas. And then there's also the, I love my parent, they're great, and they've had really high expectations of me, and so I've always thought that I had to be, the good girl, or get the best grades, or do all this because that was the expectations of my parents. But making peace with my parent is understanding that as an adult, I can actually be autonomous over my life. And those expectations came from a good place, or came from a place where they were scared and maybe projected that fear onto me. And I don't have to walk around like the walking wounded anymore, trying to make mommy and daddy happy. I can live my own life. And in living my own life, I actually create peace. And in living my own life, I choose better partners. I show up more authentically. When we have a difficult relationship with a parent, oftentimes we will marry or date or be in a relationship with someone who may not look like our parent at all, may even have a very, very different vibe and different personality, but they do possess something that when you are relating to this person, you are recreating a dynamic that you had with your parent. Maybe you had a very shut down parent. Let's just use this as an example. And then you date a lot of people who tend to shut down. And with those partners, you're trying to be enough, and you're trying to get that person to open up to you. You're recreating in some ways the drama of your childhood. So we have to understand how our childhood shows up in our adulthood. And I had a really troubling relationship with my father, and I made a lot of peace there. And I thought, if I just, because I was estranged from him for years, which was not helpful, but I didn't know what else to do. And I was so afraid of him, even though he was actually not a threat to me. But I didn't know, part of my maturing and growing up and my personal development was learning how to see him through the eyes of my adult self, and not through the eyes of my little Jillian self. And that meant being able to have healthier boundaries with him. That also meant being able to challenge the story that I always had of him, that created so much hatred inside of me, and said, maybe I can find some compassion. And that was very, very important for me in my relationship with men, because it wasn't that every relationship actually mimicked the relationship with my father. I had some relationships that had nothing to do with that. Why does that happen? I don't know. Like, there's context. Maybe when the relationships that I had that were troubling, there were other things going on in my life, and other fears and other pressures. And so who knows, right? But this idea of even if you never speak to that parent again, whether because they're not living or because of other reasons, if you can start to challenge the story that you have about them, and start to confront some of the fears that you have about them, and rewrite a little bit of the narrative, and find some peace within, then you won't then be choosing partners where you are recreating drama.
Mm-hmm. I like this verbiage of make peace, like accept that is what happened. This is where we are. It's the denial and the resistance to what is that then perpetuates the feeling and then repeats the pattern. So it's not like you need to go skipping down the street with them and write them the sweetest Father's Day card, but it's just, can I make peace with what happened and then figure out how to proceed?
That's very well said. And included in that is, maybe you have to grieve the parent that you wanted that you never had.
Something too with this, it's so hard with parents because you love them so much that there are situations where someone thinks, I should never think a bad thing about my parent. They never laid their hands on me. They always fed me. Like, I'm not allowed to acknowledge that I wasn't shown love in these ways, or that this traumatized me, right?
Yeah.
But there's so much power in the word and. Like, I have the best parent and I have been disappointed in this way and I was traumatized in this way and this is the best parent and I wouldn't change it. That's very difficult. And I feel like I've done a lot of work in my life, not necessarily with that example, but just with accepting the and with everything.
Yes. It's we people tend to think they're very binary and black and white thinking, and that's what gets us very rigid in our thoughts. And it could also be yeah, I had a difficult experience with my parent, and I can kind of understand why they had that belief as a child, like why they did that. Maybe they were going through something very difficult. Maybe they were an immigrant and their belief system was A, B, C, or D. So having an understanding and a compassion for that.
With the people that we love,
Yes.
there is love. What is your definition of love? I've heard you say it's a choice. Is that correct?
Yeah. So love isn't just a feeling. To me, it's also an action. It's a practice and it's a verb. I think we have been very influenced by this idea of romanticism, that when you love, you have all these feelings and it's not, you're flooded with all these feelings and emotions and hormones, and it's almost like this lust, and if you're not feeling that, then you must not love the person, then something must be wrong. And we have to be able to delineate between, there's the falling in love phase that really is actually quite easy. Like anyone on the street can fall in love because we don't have to do anything. We are quite literally, we're enveloped with these emotions and these hormones. But doing love is something else. Doing love is just like acknowledging that you brought an attitude home.
Yeah, putting someone else like above you.
Yeah, putting someone's needs and care and their best interest. It's not just about you. So we have to, sometimes we're not going to feel particularly loving. And we think, oh, I must not love them. No, maybe you're in a bad mood. And so like the ultimate self-awareness is, relationally speaking, in my view, is, oh, if I'm feeling agitated at my partner, could it be, not necessarily, but could it be that it's not them? It's not that my feelings have changed for them. Is that I am in a in a particular emotional state that is making it difficult for me to be loving to anyone.
What is your take on soulmates and the one?
There is no the one. I really don't believe in the one. I believe that we choose who the one will be. I think there's many people who could potentially be the one. The problem with the whole idea of the soulmate and the one is like, this person's going to complete you. You're going to find this person and they are going to somehow make up for all the issues that you have and all the deficits that you have, that their sort of like perfection is going to make it so that it's okay that you're not perfect. And that's a very dangerous belief because no one is perfect. And healthy thinking is, this person is perfect for me, even though they're not perfect. And I can recognize the ways in which they are perfect for me. And when they annoy me, I can still acknowledge that they're perfect for me, but I'm annoyed at them because we are kind of annoying as people. Like everyone can be annoying. Everyone can be difficult. And so the one is the person who you choose. You choose the one, and you're going to have to make that choice. If you're with someone for the long haul, like real long term, like a marriage, you're going to have to make that choice many, many times. They're going to change. They're going to make decisions. There's going to be things that's going to bother you. You're going to be in certain moods. You're not always going to feel like, oh, this person completes me. There's going to be times where you're going to be disappointed because they're not living up to some expectations that you had. But really, you're going to have to look within and say, well, maybe my expectations were too high. Or maybe they were unrealistic. So I don't really believe in that. I believe in co-creating a soulmate connection with another person. And I believe that if there was any such thing as a soulmate, it is the person with whom you've decided to work out your issues with, and they have done the same. And the two of you, in doing that, learn to transcend your egos. You deepen your understanding of what it is to truly love another person, and you do that together. And then perhaps that's your soulmate.
I think this gets in the way of a lot of people, right? It's just like, I'm super happy in my relationship. I love being around this person, but do I have that feeling? I mean, whenever I do a Q&A on Instagram all the time, how did you know Max was the one? How did you know he was the one? Because I tell Max all the time, I'm the type of person, I overthink everything. I
Yeah.
am never settled on anything. Like if I choose a color pink for a pillow, I will forever think about the other shade of pink I could have chose. Like, so the fact that I have zero hesitations about him being my husband and I know I don't want to be with anyone else, to me is wild. And I think I was lucky that I had that in this lifetime because
Yes.
it's just not my personality. Am I naive enough to say if I was born on the other side of the world and we never crossed paths and we spoke different languages, do I think I would have found happiness and love? Possibly. Like, I think we have multiple people we could find in our lifetime and build relationships with. Because I found him first, I'm like, thank God, because I have no interest in finding any of the other people that there could be out there.
Yeah.
But would I say he is the one? Like, yes.
Yes.
And to what you said at the end of that, transcending your egos and committing to build a life together, I feel so confident in the fact that we've committed, like, through sickness and health, through good times and bad, like, this is where we're committed to. And the notion that when you fall for that person, you'll never have a problem. You'll never be insecure. You'll never be upset with them. Like, that's also false.
Very false.
Yeah.
Very false. So yeah, and that's a wonderful thing to meet someone and to have no hesitation. And you said that you are someone who lives in your head, and then you can overanalyze. So yeah, I mean these things can happen, but it's the representation, it's the metaphor of the one and the meaning that people assign to that, which is with this person, all my problems go away. With this person, I can do absolutely anything. Maybe, and that's a lovely, lovely thought, but also with that person, you're going to have to figure out some things in life. You're going to have to repair some things because life can be long, right? You're going to have to go through things together. And I think that the one is the person you choose, that you choose who that person is because maybe you don't have that hesitation, but you can't, but don't think that it's not sometimes going to be a choice too, It's not like Cupid, darting you in the butt and then it's like, oh yeah, everything is great.
Yeah.
You're going to go through periods of time where you have to put more into the relationship than maybe you might be in the mood to put in,
And to this point of choice, I like that it follows feeling, right? There's feeling and then there's choice.
Yeah.
I remember even like the months leading up to our wedding, just really being like, oh my God, like I'm literally never going to kiss anyone else. Like I can't kiss anyone else. That's the promise I'm making. Not that I like really want to, but it's just, it's like anything in life. When you say you can't ever do something, that's going to seem attractive.
Yeah.
But then when I follow the thought of like literally nothing in my life, like would feel worth doing if it means I can't share every minute with Max. So of course I'm attracted to people and I'm sure he's attracted to people too. And we'll talk about that. Not like anything serious, but nothing would ever feel, it's the choice of, but this is my priority in life.
Yes.
So that stuff will just pass like it's flowing through a current,
Absolutely. That's well said. It also, I would imagine, aligns with the value system that you have. Like maybe you both have a value system of when you meet the person who you're going to marry, like that's the person that you are going to put your energy into. I don't know. What are your beliefs about marriage and relationship? How important to it? Is it sacred to you?
Right. And I would say in our families, talking about patterns and what we've seen, it is sacred. I mean, we got married with these crowns that my parents wore in their 30-year marriage, and then my yaya and her husband wore in their marriage, and we wore the crowns, and that means something.
Yeah.
And I have friends who are children of divorce, and they want to tread a little bit more lightly, or they want to change the narrative, and they want to value it. Are you currently in a relationship?
I'm not.
Do you find that it's hard because you're so conscious and evolved, like to find a partner that fits and meets you at the level you're at?
I mean, I don't find meeting people difficult or anything like that. I've made the choice to be single because I have been focusing on work, and I had a parent recently die. My father recently died, and just a lot going on. Oh, thank you. And so I don't really have any fear around it. I'm like very, very content single. I'm not perfect. There's no reason to put me on a pedestal or anything like that. I feel pretty confident that when I'm ready, I'll meet that person. That's why I like to help people not be so afraid to be alone. I used to not like to be alone. And so it feels really good to love my life regardless if someone is in it or not. And sure, I would love to share my life with someone, but honestly, I'm really not single because I haven't met anyone. I'm single because I've made a conscious choice to be single at this time.
Because you don't feel like anyone has been worth bringing into your life for that full commitment.
Yeah, I mean, I've met people and I've had like some relationships and all been really, really like every relationship that I've had since my divorce been absolutely lovely and healthy and with great people. I just haven't met anyone yet who I've like completely fallen in love with, who I want to like then spend this next chapter of my life with. And I just don't, yeah, I'm not going to settle. I have no interest in settling.
I love that. And I tell that to my like hot, amazing 10 out of 10 friends too. I'm like, please, like age is just a number. I know I'm biased and you want to slap me for saying that because I'm like married, but please don't settle because you don't want to wake up at later in your life and be like, gosh, I shouldn't have done this. Or what if it could have happened a few years later?
Yeah.
It almost sounds like you're talking to truth 7, which is you can't convince someone to love you.
Yeah.
Almost like about you. Like these other people cannot convince Jillian to love them because that's just not what feels right at the time. So what is that truth about? Because I do think we see it, not to stereotype, especially in women, just like, okay, if I can do all these things, he'll love me or he'll want to be with me or I'll be the one he commits to and I'll fix him.
I'll change him.
Why is this such a hard truth? You can't convince someone to love you.
And I think, so let's look at it from the perspective of like being in a relationship and then also in a dating scenario. Like in a relationship, one of the most difficult challenges for a person, it's heartbreaking, is you want a relationship to work, even if your head was on your shoulders, well, because when it matters of the heart, we don't think rationally. We just don't. Love is not a rational feeling, right? When you're in a relationship with someone and they're not loving you right, or they don't want to be in the relationship, it's very difficult to let go. But it's very important. You have to know when, if someone really is just doesn't want to be in it or is not treating you well, and you're trying to in different ways strategize to get them to choose you, to get them to stay, to get them to love you. It's such a betrayal of self, because oftentimes when we're fighting for this person to love us, it's like, what are we actually fighting for? For someone who actually can't even meet your needs, for someone who's actually not right for you. And look, the ending of a long-term relationship is very difficult, and it doesn't just happen overnight. It's usually a series of many different conversations. And not always, but oftentimes there's someone who just wants to keep on going and the other person is just done. And it's one of the most difficult things to accept, but it's very, very, very important. And letting go is hard. We don't want to let go. We want to hold on to the attachment. In dating, that's like choose me energy, pick me energy. Let me find this person who's not emotionally available or not that into me or has major problems and things that I really want them to heal and change. And instead of seeing that as a warning sign that they're actually not ready or not right for me, let me figure out a way to inspire his change. I think that's in romantic novels. I think that's in rom-coms. I think that's something that's been very much, it's very archetypical. It's like, we've seen like if we're thinking in very heteronormative terms, we're seeing the man who's like complicated and struggling and doesn't know what he wants, but
and then changes for the right girl.
It changes for the right girl. And so a lot of women have that fantasy of being that girl that the man changes for because it's so validating. And it's all conditioning.
This was like me and my like elementary school crush who just like would never like me back, and just had the biggest crush. And even to this day I'm like, I can't believe he never liked me back. Like
Exactly.
I
Like,
am
what
great.
is that? Yeah.
Yeah. Literally, like it's so funny how we've almost been trained to view that like attractive. Like they don't give you the time of day. One of my favorite rom-coms is He's Just Not That Into You. And it
Me
starts
too.
with them on the playground and
Uh-huh.
he's being mean, and they say, well, you know what that
Means,
means.
yeah, they really like you. I was told that too,
If he's mean to you, he likes you.
Uh-huh.
And then you grow up and then you're
Talk about planting a seed.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
classic. This reminds me of one of your go-to slogans that I love is chemistry is nothing if they're not kind.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, everyone needs to hear that
Yes.
because they have this lust and maybe this great sexual chemistry or this great feeling, but he's an ass.
Yes.
Like they should
ass.
or she's an ass.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there needs to be respect.
I know. People really confuse chemistry with love. You know, there's a whole truth about lust is not love. And they confuse all those feelings like it must be love or they must be right because the chemistry is so strong. And we think, we have such a strong connection. Actually, that really strong connection that you feel in the beginning is actually chemistry. A true strong connection comes as a result of safety and trust. That is a foundation that the two of you build over time of spending a lot of time together, overcoming some obstacles together, having some hard conversations together. And then people will have chemistry and play house with a stranger. And then you couple that with someone who's desperate to be in a relationship. And I want to say, I don't think desperate is a bad word. I think that if we're all honest with ourselves, there have been times where we feel a little desperate. Maybe for a woman, it's her biological clock is clicking and she wants to get married. Maybe someone is really bored, right? We all need love. But if you meet someone and you have chemistry and you compound that with the fact that you're not liking your life single, or you've been single for a really long time and legitimately it's hard, and you really want to get married and you're of a certain age, like all this pressure, and then you think I have this amazing chemistry, but you don't have the maturity to understand that chemistry can really happen between you and the wrong person very easily. I do believe chemistry is important, but it has no weight. It has no relevance if they're not kind and they don't treat you well, if you don't have similar values. And so I really want people to really prioritize a person's character over anything else. And what I really mean by that is you have chemistry with someone, don't lose your ability to be discerning. And that means that you might have to change a little bit the way that you approach things when you have chemistry with someone. Maybe you need to slow down. Maybe for you, you have to not sleep with them so quickly because once those chemicals get going,
You're
it can
attached.
you're attached and it clouds our judgment.
Yeah. I find that I've heard a lot of stories that are almost the opposite as well, where they're really kind, they're great, they're steady, but
they're not it.
They're not, yeah.
That happens.
That's tough.
It's tough. It happens. You don't want to just go for the safe choice either. You want someone safe, but a lot of people have been hurt, right? So then their thing is that, like, let me just go for the safe person. And then they feel totally unsatisfied and unfulfilled. It's never going to work. You can't just do the safe choice. You got to do the right choice. And what makes a person right? Well, you have to understand yourself on some level. You have to understand what it is that you need.
Mm-hmm.
You have to understand what it is that you want to build. You have to understand what your weaknesses are.
Yeah.
In a relationship.
Which honestly goes right back to your book of It Begins With You.
It does begin with you.
Honestly, I feel like because I met Max in college, I was doing my own work. I was in therapy. I was going through my own dark night of the soul and a major depressive episode, struggling. And I told the story on a recent episode, but I just had this moment where I realized, oh, Prince Charming actually doesn't fix all my problems.
Yeah.
He's here, but I'm still a mess.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like I was going through that at the beginning of our relationship, but also that allowed me to keep working on myself because I realized, okay, he's not going to fix it all.
Yeah, exactly. It's a kind of a rude awakening.
Yeah. So much of our lives is our perspective, how we look at it, how we show up.
Yes.
We really can only control ourselves. And you could sit there and think about all the ways everyone screwed you over. You've been the victim, or you this. And okay, that does nothing but perpetuate this storyline. I think too, with love, people in their heads can say, you know, oh, this is how it's meant to be. And if this doesn't work out, I'm going to be unhappy. And like they go 20 years in the future and it's like, whoa, we're right here. There's no evidence supporting that story.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. But that's how, we get in our heads and we get really, really scared and we go into learned helplessness. And it takes a lot of practice to not go into those stories. It's really important to be discerning. It's not about being overly picky, because then there are people who are just the opposite. No one's good enough for them.
Right.
You know,
I have one of my best friends. I love her to death, but the list to get in the door is long. And I'm like, okay, maybe we'll take off British accent. Like, you know,
yeah.
I don't know if that
she'll be single for a really long time then. Longer
right.
than what's comfortable. Your list has to be very concise. These are my deal breakers. This is what I absolutely need in order to like function in a relationship, and then you got to tolerate all the rest.
And compromise and know that they could grow, you could grow.
Absolutely.
Or you might have envisioned that would be your hobby together and it's not, but you have two best friends who love to do that with you.
Yes, absolutely.
If you had to leave everyone with like one mantra or sentence to just like carry them through the battlefield of understanding relationships and finding love, what's your favorite go-to?
I mean, honestly, it's like, be the change that you want to see in your love life. And also, what I will say is, the health of a relationship is determined by two things: who you choose to partner with, because who you choose to spend your life with is literally maybe the most important decision you will ever make, because your partner will have the greatest impact on your overall well-being. And then number two, who you decide, who you choose to show up as. So it's who you choose and who you choose to show up as. And these are the two things that are not taught, and it's crucial. So that's what I would leave behind.
I love that. The second part too. Yeah. What's your role?
Yeah. How are you going to show up?
Jillian, thank you so much. I love talking about this stuff. I think it is who we love and the people we care about is literally the most important thing in life. And it's wild that our whole society is like built around not spending time with them and
I know.
waiting for the one weekend day or the one holiday. It's crazy.
It's crazy. I agree.
But thank you. And I'm really excited for everyone to get their hands on your book. I know it's going to help a lot of people, as your work already has.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you.